Howdy. Hope y'all are still doing well. You know, this next one that I wanted to go into is going to be a little more, I don't know, I guess esoteric. I want to go into a little bit of like the different kind of empaths, and then a little bit of like my experience and how I discovered, you know, who I was at a soul level. You have to understand, guys, the soul is eternal. Some people say, well, I'm an old soul. And indeed, you can be an old soul. And in fact, I'm an old soul. When I say that, I don't just mean that like I shake my fist at the front yard or on the porch yelling at kids, get off my lawn! No, I don't mean it in that sense. Although, you know, I do appreciate older music, the classics, things like that. No, but what I mean is my soul has been around for a long time, a very long time. We go through life, our life streams, our soul. And when we die, it goes back to the ethereal realm. There, we are judged. Whether or not we learned our lessons while in our vessels here on earth. Karma, your karmic debt gets weighed. And depending on what you've learned, how well you learned your lessons and applied the lessons, will depend on what parts of nirvana and the ethereal realm you get to dwell in, how long you get to stay up there. You want to stay up there. It's great. I'll go into more of that later in a little bit.
10 marbles.
Your marbles. What's up, buddy?
10 marbles.
Mm-hmm.
What's it? 10 marbles.
I'll be back. All right, guys. Had to do some dad stuff. We've got it's an ABC of engineering book, and Noah loves it. He knows all the letters, and each letter has an engineering term associated with it, you know, and so we get to go over the definitions and things like that. He's so creative, and he just really, it's really cool to watch him. He really could be like an engineer or an architect one day. I mean, whatever he wants to, you know, grow up to be, but it's fun to see that. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. What were we talking about? The soul. How it's eternal. And when we die, it goes to the etheric realm. And then we are judged by God. By the karmic board. On this board, there are many entities, masters, creations of God. They look at a soul and they weigh its karma. And depending on your karmic debt, what you've accrued, if you've learned your lessons, depends on how long you get to stay up in bliss and nirvana in the ethereal realm, what you're going to have to suffer, learn through, and then where you're going to come back to when you come back. It's run kind of like a business up there. God's the boss. He's got all these entities, all these creations that he has made, and they have tasks, they have jobs. Angels, seraphims, cherubs. I mean, there's all kind. You'll have to look into it. It's some real interesting stuff. And tying that into how the soul is eternal, right? When you come back, it's the same soul, but in a different vessel. So you can live, and the idea is that through your life streams, you will have lived as everyone, both genders, each race. You will have experienced and hopefully learned all the lessons that you need to in each embodiment. Maybe you've lived once as a rich man. Maybe you've lived once as a poor woman. Maybe you've lived once as this race or that race. And as you go, you should have collected good karma lessons from each one. If you have, then you get to move forward. And eventually the goal is you don't have to come back, because the afterlife is great. And I think that was what I last left on. It is a wonderful place, and I remember some of it. I sure do. I remember being able to run. Somebody might go, well, that's not that. What? No, it's different. When you think, what you think instantly happens. And they're all good thoughts. There are no weird, evil thoughts while you're up there. And there's fields of gold. And I remember being able to just think that I wanted to run as far and as fast as I could, and I could instantly. It happened. There were people that I loved. It was amazing. I didn't want to leave. But eventually I was summoned by the board. But I'm an old soul. This was discovered to me in a dream. Also, when I had my memories come back, my grandfather explained it. I believe my grandfather was a medium too. And I also believe that he would be taken in and taken away from his higher self in a way. They would put him back under. But there were moments where his higher self would come out and he would start speaking about things of a golden age, and he would prophesy and say some things that the other ones in my family, the lower levels, the lodge folks, didn't really agree with. And my grandfather was a lodge guy too. I can't, he wasn't perfect. But no, he explained to me, and it was revealed to me in a dream, that at a soul level, I'm very old. I'm what they call a Manu. I lived many lifetimes as shamans, consistently. I don't mean this to brag or boast about myself, because if you know anything about shamanhood, it is a tough life. They have very intense rituals, initiations. It's not like what we think. Anyway. And then I'm a special kind of empath, a rare one. In the Native American culture, they call this a sacred clown, a mirror, or the Heyoka. I am a Heyoka empath. And because of this, God gave me a special task. I'm going to briefly describe one of the more recent initiations that I went through astrally. Because you have to understand, I'm not a member of these lodges. I was scapegoated, right? I refused the oath. I haven't gone through the official Master Mason initiations, at least not on the giving end. We'll get back to it. Hey. Whew. Had to take a break, hang out with Noah. We went and walked around the neighborhood and played in the backyard a little bit, watered the plants, put bird feed out in the bird feeders. It was fun. Picking up where we left off. The initiations. Yeah, I didn't take place in them. At least not in the sense to where I'm under oath, which is why I'm able to share these secrets with you. I never took the oath. But I still went through the initiations. Does that make sense? I went through the rituals, but not under oath. Anyway. But nevertheless, I have been initiated astrally, because I have leveled up. I explained in a lesson earlier that you don't have to be a member of these lodge groups to get initiated, to get these spiritual attainments, the knowledge. Joining the lodge and doing their rituals and things like that, that's only going to yoke you under bondage to them. And they're really not even going to teach you that much. They're probably not going to teach you anything at all. They're just going to get you in trouble. There's going to be a point of no return. Now, but the last big initiation I went through astrally, my grandfather was there. It was in a dream. We're at like a Airbnb style kind of rental, as we often would. My grandfather was there. My cousins were there. And Grandpa starts talking, and we noticed some art in the house. And the art in the house was like, it looked like Argonians from Skyrim, lizard people. I remember saying something about it. I said, oh, they look like Argonians. My grandpa then gets up. Remember, this isn't a dream. He stands up, and then he starts doing he's preaching. I told you my grandpa was a pastor, and there were times where I feel like he would actually tap into his higher self, because I think he was a medium too. And he would start prophesying and preaching, and he starts doing that in the dream. He's going on about the history of these Argonians and this esoteric knowledge. And I noticed my cousins they're not listening to him, right? A lot of that stuff they didn't really believe, right? They believed in the power and more of the the Western scientific side of these occult schools and esotericism. They really didn't believe in, the light and the Eastern side. Anyway, all right, I digress. So he's going on. Then, all of a sudden, he has like he just straightens up, like that, and he falls backwards. He's hurt. And I noticed that, and I rushed to his aid to go help him. He's on the floor. I bend down, and I give him a cracker, a peanut butter cracker. We used to eat lots of Lance peanut butter crackers growing up. Me and him would go fishing. I spent a lot of time with my grandpa. I called him Papa. I spent a lot of time with my papa. And me and him would go fishing, and that was one of the snacks that we'd have on the fishing boat. A couple packs of Lance peanut butter crackers. And so I give him a Lance peanut butter cracker. He eats it, and it revives him. You got to understand, guys, things in these dreams, they're not just like straightforward, What was the dream revealing and telling me with the Lance peanut butter cracker? That I was a healer. I could heal. I healed my grandfather in that dream, right? During this time, I've been going through so much awakening and discovering things and getting my memories back, ascending. Anyway, Grandpa gets up and he says, oh, what happened? I said, well, you started talking about Argonians and then you fell backwards. So I came to help you. He goes, oh, okay. Well, did I do any good? And he looks at me. At this point, I had done realized I'm in a dream. I go, well, I think you left some things out, but you can tell me more about it later. And then he looks at me with wide eyes and excitement. And I said, yeah, I know who I am. And he goes, yes! And then grabbed my back and stuffed his hand into my chest. But it didn't hurt. And then all of a sudden I hear, and we start levitating and rising, spiraling. And I'm letting this go on. Remember, I'm aware that this is a dream. I could pull out any time, but I'm letting it go. Go on like that for a few moments, and then I wake up. And when I wake up, there's a vibrational sensation over my entire body. Almost like the feeling like when you're, like an appendage or something is going to sleep. That was an initiation. It was a confirmation that I knew who I was, that I knew who I am, that I knew who my soul. At a soul level, I had discovered myself. This is just, my journey. I'm not going to say it's going to be exactly like that for everybody, but that's what it was for me. It was nice to hear him say that in excitement. I think he always knew. When I came back into this incarnation, I took on an assignment. God gave me a task. And for the reward, as a reward for completing the task, I'm not going to have to come back. This is my last round. Unless I want to. Sometimes souls choose to come back when they don't have to help the human race. And my grandfather told me that, or told my dad that, on one of their talks on the path. He said, I saw the master. He told me about him, and he was talking about me. And he said I was going to be able to break a curse, that I'd be strong enough to do it. I think he knew the task I was already given. I had accepted. I already told you that the program I went through, where the government messes with your mind, gives you a impressive memory recall. At least the protocol I went through. Wonder why you think the government would want people to have a very sharp memory like that. Maybe if someone had to tell their testimony, to testify. Yeah, I was given a task, all right. I told you I'm a secret agent. My assignment was to infiltrate a ring. A dangerous ring. An elite ring. To suffer in this ring. To survive in this ring. And then to one day tell my story, to testify. I'm not bound by your oath. Freemasons. But I know what happens behind those closed doors. So yeah, if you've been keeping up with any of my story, I was made to suffer and endure it all, to remember, so that I could share. And there are others like me. I'm not the only one. There's more of us. Can you imagine what kind of testimony that would be if 2, 3, 4, 6 grown adults who were once children, who endured the punishment and pain of a pedophile ring, came and shared their story? How many do you think it would take? What if these children were put through a program backed by the government to remember certain events, almost like receipts? I can disappear, but the word won't. I've completed my task. It's going to be interesting, folks. An exciting time indeed. All right, guys. Y'all have a good day.